Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Rhythm Roast Cafe, coming to you live stream from beautiful former studios of the. Well, we'll just say we're live. We hope you're streaming with us. We are talking today about Gaza and the Palestinian situation. Today's guest to my left is Nina.
Hello, everyone.
And joining with us is Tom to my right and Nick to Nina's left. So, as it is, we're going to go on right now and explain our points of view and try to find out what your points of view are on the situation in the Near East. Nina, would you like to give us a little bit of a background on who you are and how your interests lie?
Absolutely. So my name is Nasreen. I go by Nina. Both of my parents are from Palestine, and their parents are from Palestine. My grandparents were directly affected by the 1948 Nakba, and I was born and raised here in Illinois. I'm happily married to an Irish man in a Catholic family. We have two great kids together, and this news and war that's been happening on Gaza has been incredibly devastating.
Okay. When you say that you bring us back to 48, I have a Jewish friend who tells me that I'm always off base when I talk about the problems that and why they occurred in the Near East. I say historically they go back to the Romans. I blame the Romans because the Jews were living there and the Romans wanted tax. Because I just got back from Italy and I want to tell you, here's the weave. I want to tell you one thing. Italians hate tax. They hate tax, okay? They don't want to pay any tax. You go to Rome. Rome's a beautiful city. It's filled with garbage. Why is it filled with garbage? Nobody wants to pay taxes. They have anybody clean it up. There's no street cleaners. I don't see it. They remove garbage maybe once every 2 weeks from the streets. It smells. Why? I don't know. They don't want to pay the tax, okay? So back in the Roman days, what did they do? They didn't want to pay taxes then either. So instead of paying taxes, they conquered other people, and they made them pay tribute, and that was the idea. Don't pay your tax, make other people pay it for you.
Well, listen, I
That's
know
the weave.
I know a little bit about history, but I don't think the Romans were around when Moses led his people out of Egypt and then settled into what they thought was
That
the
probably
problem.
never
As-
happened.
Yeah, there was no Romans back then. Okay, so you mentioned 1948 and you used a term and I didn't recognize it. Could you explain it first of all? You said your grandparents were affected by something.
The Nakba.
Nakba. What is that?
Nakba, it's the definition of it means catastrophe.
Okay.
And it is the expulsion of 750,000 Palestinians from their homes. Thousands died, and over 500 villages were burned down. It affected a majority of the population at the time, because at the time there were 2 million Palestinians living in Palestine when the United Nations gave the land to Israel.
So, all of the people, of the Palestinians, inhabited all the area now that is considered Israel, or did they inhabit more than Israel? Were they in Egypt? Were they in Syria? Were they in Lebanon as well?
Yes, I believe that the Arabs inhabited a majority of that community for the longest. So you have the Egyptian territory, majority Arab. You have Lebanon, its neighbors, Arabs. You have Saudi Arabia, Arabs. Pakistan, Iran, all Arab, Morocco, Arabs. Even parts of Africa are even native to Arabs. You know, it has been known throughout history, though, that the land has been shared by many people of faiths. To say that the Palestinians were the only ones there would be incorrect.
I see.
There were a small number of Jews always there.
You
Even
are
after
correct.
The Romans, there were two great wars. There was the Jewish War, and then there was the Bar Kokhba rebellion under Hadrian. And the Romans said a lot of the Jews dispersed around the empire. But there was always Jews in Palestine, and they had schools and stuff. But I think the majority of the people after the Romans, certainly by the time of the Middle Ages, the majority of the people were Arab people and Muslims.
You are correct. So the Romans did expel the Jews from that land, and they weren't welcomed back until it was the Ottoman Empire, and the Ottomans had welcomed them back. And it was until the end of the Ottoman Empire around the 17th century when I believe Palestine was established. So we're looking at it being written down on paper for the first time and being recognized, but Palestina has been even located in like Latin maps as early as 1650. So it does have like variations of dates. It does make it really difficult to pinpoint the date because during the Nakba, when Israel came into Palestine, they burned all the archives. When they burned down the villages, they burned all the archives because
When you say they, British, French, American,
the Israelis
the Israelis.
in support with the United Nations. So it
Were
was
there UN troops there?
UN troops were there on the ground.
Wasn't before World War II, wasn't that area under British colonial rule? At
British
one point?
mandate.
British
Right.
mandated
when
Palestine.
they cut up the Ottoman Empire after the Great War in 1919, and the French said, well, we'll take this part, and the British said, we'll take this, you know.
Those were the lines drawn in sand.
And they set up some independent, like the Hashemites dynasty, which was the guy, Prince Faisal and Lawrence of Arabia, right? So they got Jordan and Iraq, and they got part of what Saudi Arabia, but then the Saud took over and drove those people out of Saudi Arabia. But anyway, they're cutting this up, you know.
It
The
just seems,
Europeans are saying, oh, you can have
Right.
this, but we'll keep that, you know.
it seems funny that just as a Greek, that the Ottomans would welcome the Israelis. That's just something I find that to be.
They were very pragmatic. The Ottomans were very pragmatic.
Always pragmatic. Aren't they, doesn't the Sultan approve the Greek patriot? I mean,
Well, yeah, but now they do. I mean, now it's actually it's Turkish law that the patriarch has to be born in Turkey, educated in Turkey, which is a little bit more difficult because they closed all of the seminaries in Turkey, the Orthodox seminaries in Turkey. So it's pretty hard to find somebody. In the early 1900s, there were about 1,600 churches, seminaries, orphanages in Turkey, and now I don't know if there's even 50.
Well, the secular Turks have a different policy than the Ottomans did. The Ottomans were very pragmatic, and religiously, that you could do your own religion. You know, you might pay a tax. The best soldiers in the Ottoman Empire were the Janissaries, and they were Christian children from the Balkans that were taken and raised as Muslims, and they were slave soldiers was what they were.
they were more than taken. Their villages were destroyed. Their parents were killed. Their fathers and grandfathers were slaughtered. Their
That was
mothers-
only at the beginning.
Their mo-
That was just to get them
I mean,
started.
this went on for hundreds of years. That was only at the beginning.
That was just to get started.
Right.
And then they got nice.
It's-
Well, that's the whole genesis around Bosnia-Herzegovina. I mean, that whole problem revolved around what the Janissaries were, what they did, and how they became janissaries. The Europeans were fighting against their own offspring. They were killing their own little kids, okay, is what they were doing. And these kids were trained from 7 years old to be the baddest ass soldiers in the whole area. So they took no quarter. You had to kill your own kid, you know, or your own progeny, whatever you want to call it.
Well, the Poles gave them what for?
So you indicated that your grandparents were greatly affected by the atrocities back in the 40s, but then your parents. When did your parents migrate?
So my father came here first. He came here in the late 70s.
Okay.
And then went back to Palestine, met my mother, and then brought her back here after they had married.
Did your grandparents accompany them? Were they gone by that time? Did they have any desire to leave? Or?
So my grandfather came here first on my dad's side, and he established here in Chicago, and he ended up meeting a lovely Puerto Rican woman, you know, and rather than get his citizenship established, you know, here in the United States, he decided to move to Puerto Rico with her. Well, at the time that he had gotten married and was deciding to move, that's when my father moved out here. He was trying to have a closer relationship with his dad because my grandfather left my grandmother when my youngest uncle was only 3 days old.
Wow.
Yeah, they had a rough relationship. You know, it was very hard for them.
Quite a frontiersman.
And did they ever talk about why they left? I mean, I know my grandparents emigrated from Greece, and it was real simple. There was nothing there. It was dirt poor. You know, they just couldn't survive, and they decided to come here to take a chance at a better life. Was that a similar story?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You know, and I think that's what my father and his brothers and my mother's family and her family, that was the only option that was left to them. You know, so my father's family coming here first with his uncles, his cousins, his father, and establishing like an already familiar area, it just made him feel comfortable to establish here in Illinois as well. So I don't know, it got to be not safe for any of them to stay.
Have you been back to either Israel and or Palestine? Have you ever been there, first of all?
Yeah.
Okay. How often you go back?
So
or-
the first time that I went when I was 3, and that was to my mother's sister was getting married, so that was my first time there. Very vague memory of it, only pictures of me going to Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is the Rock of the Dome. And then the second time I went out there was again for another family member's wedding. My mother accompanied me, my sister's in tow, you know, a 16-hour flight. We either had a layover in Germany or Amsterdam, somewhere in that area. Back then was when they had like the Yasser Arafat airport as well. So we were able to fly directly there.
When you say directly there, where was there? Where did you fly into?
Tel Aviv.
Okay.
You know, and it was crazy because that's like the first airport that they had built. And you know what? Come to think of it, I don't actually think it's Tel Aviv. I think it's south. I think it's closer to Gaza, the Yasser Arafat airport.
Yeah, because I went to Jerusalem in the mid-90s, and you fly into Tel Aviv. That's where you fly into.
Right.
You don't fly into Jerusalem. You fly into Tel Aviv, and then you.
Jerusalem's in the hills.
Right. Well, the Yasser Arafat airport was demolished. I believe it was after he passed away that it was demolished by Israel. But it was.
So when
I
you-
did live there for a time.
When you were there, okay, did you? I mean, was it a daily confrontation for you to deal with the Israelis? You were in the Dome on the Rock, so that's right in the middle of Jerusalem.
Mhm.
I've been to Jerusalem. I know that there's Arab businesses. There's the Greeks run a majority of the holy sites there. They're under their auspices for the most part. They've had a symbiotic relationship with people, whoever was in control of that area since since Christ. So I mean, I'm just, and in your experience, what was it like visiting, being there as a Palestinian?
It was beautiful. It was the best experience that I could have asked for. It's one thing to be born in the United States. There is such privilege that comes with that. There are so many freedoms and so many liberties that you have as an American. But when you know that your people come from a different place, and then you go there and you see that place for your own eyes, it really brings you closer to who you are in here.
Absolutely.
Danny just got back from Sicily for how many? What's the fifth time? How many times you been there?
This is the third time.
Third. Yeah. Yeah, it's you go to your hometowns. I mean, in Greece as well, you go to your home villages, and it has a different connection. I guess what I'm getting at is, as a Palestinian, did you feel welcome? Did you feel threatened? Did you feel that at any time that you had to look over your shoulder, unsafe because of that you were Palestinian and you were in a mostly Israeli town?
Could they distinguish you by looking at you?
Absolutely. Absolutely, they could.
What was the
But
distinguishing factor? Because I couldn't tell. You could look Greek, Italian, Jewish, or Arabic.
So
I wouldn't know.
It would be definitely the town that you're in, where you shop, because it is very apartheid. There is it is very much segregated. It's
so
you
where
know that
you
all
shop tells you who you are.
So
exactly.
From experience, I can tell you that when I was in Israel and Jerusalem, there was a tour that we went to a Greek monastery that was in the Arabic part of outside of Nazareth, outside of Bethlehem, and we had to take an Arab bus with an Arab bus driver. The Israeli buses were not allowed to go in there. Okay.
The checkpoints.
It wasn't even a checkpoint. We didn't have to go through a checkpoint. We just went, and it was they just know that you're not going to bring an Israeli bus with an Israeli bus driver into that area. We had to get an Arabic bus and an Arabic bus driver, and we didn't know the difference. I mean, but now we have this Greek monastery in the middle of nowhere it's an orphanage to mostly Palestinian Arab kids, and it was wonderful. It was just really an amazing experience. They were throwing flowers at our bus as we were leaving. It was really kind of marvelous. But the point being is, to add to what she was saying, is that there are certain parts that you just don't go.
Because
okay, I don't go to Inglewood, all right, and I'm not going there, all right. Sorry, but I'm not. And it's I take it's similar.
It is very similar.
Did you wear the burqa?
When I attended all girls school there, I did.
Did you feel comfortable when you went back wearing it or not wearing it, or didn't it matter?
Wearing the hijab is a choice that every woman can make freely in Palestine. It's a choice based off of when that woman hits puberty. So it is solely up to her, whether or not she wants to wear it. If she chooses not to, then that's on her. That's between her and God.
Are there degrees to it? I mean, is there one where it's just a veil, or
in certain
nun?
countries like Iran, absolutely. That's like a full face covering and everything like that. But in Palestine, it's not like that. They don't have a law that says that if you're an adult woman, you have to wear hijab.
But I mean, can you do half of it? Can you do just the veil without the mask?
They just do the veil in Palestine. They don't do the mask across the face. No.
Okay.
Well, you see a lot of Muslim women that have a head covering that leaves their whole. It almost looks like a hoodie kind of a thing, but tight fitting. Is that what do you call that?
Hijab.
That's a hijab.
Yeah.
You see that a lot.
Yeah. It's meant to make you more modest. Tone down your looks, give less, because it's always like the evil eyes watching you, so it's have modesty, don't wear too much makeup, don't be flamboyant,
don't drive Mercedes, don't carry
no,
Gucci bags,
that's actually we
don't
can
carry
do
Gucci
that.
bags, right? That's modesty, right?
Yeah.
And what comes of all this? I was laying in bed last night thinking about this today. I'm thinking of all the ramifications of what's going on over there today, and I see no solution. I see no solution. I think this is just gonna go on until,
until somebody's wiped out.
yeah.
I'm thinking the question I wanted to ask you when you said that, oh, the genesis of where your family came from. Liberals in this country think simplistically that a two-state solution solves it, okay? I'm looking at that geographic map. You would need a four-state solution because the Palestinians are spread out in three different areas that aren't contiguous. They're not joined together. The people on the southeast are not near the people where you came from on the bank, right, the West Bank.
Correct.
So I don't see how a two-state solution works.
Okay.
Are there any comments out there? Do you guys have any opinions at all? Nothing? Crickets? Oh my goodness. All right.
So the West Bank used to be part of Jordan, right? Before the 6-Day War, 7-Day War?
Yes.
It's part of Jordan,
Sort of.
yeah,
Sort of.
Yeah, a lot of
But, I
people.
mean-
It's under Jordan's protection.
yeah.
It's under Jordan's protection. Same thing with Gaza, under Egyptian protection by Rafah crossing. You know, they needed those other countries to step in and kind of give them a little bit of something because they don't have
But
anything. On
correct
their
me-
side, you know.
Jordanians are the best soldiers of the Arabs.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when this war broke out last year or 2 years ago, the Egyptians didn't open the border to the Palestinians to come over.
No, they didn't. And I'm glad that they didn't because the Palestinians don't want to be refugees.
Okay.
Okay, the Palestinians don't want to be dragged out into the Sinai desert. They don't want to be set up in tents because they'll just be starved to death like what's happening in Saudi Arabia and the 80,000 refugees that are sitting in the middle of the Saudi Arabian desert. You know, and Anwar, who was funding them and giving them money for years to help, like, you know, find them homes, give them relocation, anything like that, they ended up getting defunded. So there hasn't been that money from them. You know, there is pushing them out of the land is not the solution.
Well, it wasn't a question of pushing them out of the land, and it, you know, your response is more of like, well, we're glad it didn't happen, but the fact is they weren't welcomed by the Egyptian government, and as an outsider looking in, I'm going, why?
And because it's all a political and economic.
Well, that's like Illinois taking all the refugees from Indiana. Do you want them Indiana people in
No, all the
Illinois?
Indiana people
No,
are
but
taking
it
the
is-
refugees from Illinois.
Well,
Is what
either
they're
way.
doing.
But it is either way.
Well, it's very different, Danny. Come on.
Yeah, it's either way. There is money there. You can't deny it. Like the Palestine has gas, it has oil, it has gold, it has like
A seashore,
it has
ports.
ports exactly. You know, the Suez Canal is trying to get annexed. Like the British don't want to go down through the Suez Canal. Instead, they can get a lot easier if they traded with Israel. Because Israel is their greatest ally. How? I don't understand how everybody can like justify what Israel's doing as being okay in any kind of way.
Well, Al, my Jewish friend Al was right in one respect. Maybe Romans are too far to go back, but I'll go back in history to World War II, and I'll say that the United States, Great Britain, and France all chickened out on the Israelis, Jews, whatever, Holocaust victims. What they should have done, those people knew
Give it to
German.
Bavaria.
They should have planted them in Bavaria. They should have moved all of the Holocaust victims into Bavaria and made the Bavarians pay the price of giving up their property, since they were the ones
The
that were responsible
Palestinians are paying
for the sins of the
Europeans.
Bavarians,
Or the
because the
Europeans.
Americans and the UK and the French were too chicken to deal it out.
First of all, I don't think a lot of the Israelis or Jews wanted that. A lot of them wanted to go back to
You're
what they
right.
thought that they think is their God-given place to be on this
But
earth.
God made a practical joke on those people.
Okay, well, you tell them that when you get there, all right? But the fact of the matter is from a religious standpoint, and this is where we're going to get into the whole problem is, from a religious standpoint, each one feels that that is their territory, that that is their God-given place to live.
Religiously, the Palestinians
Don't.
don't. The religious ties to the land, yes, we were there because obviously the Rock of the Dome is a Muslim. Al
Right,
Aqsa
outside of
Mosque.
Mecca.
Yeah, outside of Mecca, there are holy Muslim, Islamic holy sites there.
I've
You
had 'em.
know, but it's just that when Israel took over, they were going to destroy the Rock of the Dome to rebuild their first temple.
Right.
And it's barbaric. You
But they
can't-
didn't.
But they didn't because technically that's still Palestine. And that's why when the map was first made, and if you look at the map from 1948, it shows you the land that was given to the Palestinians and the land that was given to the Israelis. And then now, over the course of time, you see that land keep getting taken away from the Palestinians, and the Palestinians get less and less and less and less and less on the map.
I want to ask the conservative here. What if I was Elon Musk and I had all the money in the world and I raised a private army and I called myself the Philistines and I decided to take Cana back from everybody, okay? And I went in there and I wiped out Jews and Palestinians and said, I'm the original Canaanite. I deserve this land. Would that be morally correct?
Probably not.
Well, I'm thinking that's the same thing that's going on now. Okay, people after a couple thousand years, a couple hundred years, are coming back and saying, God gave us this land. Okay?
This
So how
land
far are we
was
going to go back?
promised to us.
You know,
How far how
It-
far does the United States go back? How far do the Greeks go back? How far do the Israelis go back? I mean,
Exactly the point.
exactly. How far back do we go back do we say, okay, this is the way we want to revert back to, and this is the way it's going to be for everybody?
but we should have done it by contract.
Well, what we should have done doesn't solve anything. It's where we're at and what we need
Correct.
to do. Okay.
What do we need to do
I
now?
mean, I appreciate what you're saying, Dan, but I'm more of a practical guy. It's like, okay, I got to deal with the here and now. Okay.
All you can- all you
In
can
my
do
job,
over there now
in my
is
job,
Band-Aids.
I can't go back and say, well, you should have done this or you should have done that. I go, no. My job and when I practice is this is where we're at and this is what we need to do to move forward.
You got
Like
big,
it or
you
not.
got big players over there, big shots, big shot Israelis. You have political leaders on each side that are willing to sacrifice their people for their political ends, but their political ends are driven by a righteous yearning. But all you can do is there's people that are suffering that don't have a big political stake in this. They're suffering every day. And you have to, the first thing you can do, maybe the only thing you can do, is help those people's day-to-day life right now that need medical care, that need food, that need shelter, and take care of that. And-
But
I think we have to look at the bigger picture here, guys, and I'm just
Yeah.
going to go out and say it.
Yeah.
I think the solution is to entirely dismantle the Israeli military from forcibly occupying Palestine in such a barbaric way that they are using war crimes. And there's like an arrest warrant by the United Nations
Right.
for Bibi Netanyahu right now. They need to find him, arrest him, dismantle the military, and create structure. Actual structure in the land where people can live civilly. And by what I mean civilly is that both Palestinians and Jews can be held accountable for crimes. At this time, there is no accountability being held for the crimes that the Jews are committing against the Palestinians. There aren't, so if you look at it from my
and
perspective,
who's to do that?
And who's to do that? Other people have to step
It's-
in.
One
Right, I
mistake
mean-
that they made with the attack on Israel, they should have confined their attacks to police stations and soldiers.
Yeah.
When they
They
made it, when-
confined their attack to a military base, and then when they were chased out of the military base, they had stumbled upon a rave, and then at the rave, between crossfire, Israelis had ended up killing their own people.
So,
Well, there were people
what
killed.
you're saying is that those kids that were dragged off on motorcycles was collateral damage?
No, not. I'm saying that when you when you look at it from my perspective, they were warned about the attack before it happened. But the attack in itself was to get hostages in order to release other hostages that were being imprisoned. Political prisoners. There are people that there are Palestinians that are being held in Israeli prisons with no crimes, no actual crimes to them. And there are children. Over 700 children are imprisoned in Israeli jails under the age of 12. So you look at this and you're like, what kind of country, what kind of military group imprisons children and falsely imprisons people on no charges, no actual charges? And
no writ of habeas corpus.
Exactly.
Well, listen, I don't know enough. And
does that sound familiar? America?
You throw around figures that I don't have the ability or the knowledge to verify or not. You can also hear contra arguments that a lot of these terroristic attacks and stuff are led by children purposefully, because Hamas and a lot of these extremist groups will use children, will use women as shields. They'll use them as pawns for them to do whatever they've set out to do. Do you think that there would be a better relationship with Israel if Hamas was not in control of Gaza?
No, I don't.
Do you think Hamas is an effective leader of the Palestinian people?
No, I don't.
So what's the alternative then?
The alternative is the Palestinian people. Okay. Themselves. Let them figure it out, govern, appoint someone, have structure.
And again, as my understanding, my limited understanding is Hamas has such a stranglehold on Gaza that it's almost impossible for so then the Palestinian people that have elected Hamas to be their leaders are okay with that.
Did you know that when Hamas was elected, that most of the population of Gaza, 60% of the population of Gaza, were children? They weren't even old enough to vote for Hamas.
Okay.
So when they're saying they voted for Hamas, who are these people that voted?
Well, how did Hamas? That's what I'm saying.
20 people out of 2.2 million voted.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that is Hamas really the rightful representative of the Palestinian people that is working in the Palestinian people's best interest?
No, but the Palestinians are being collectively punished for the hostages that they took. Hamas is doing a prisoner exchange. Mm-hmm. They have hostages for hostages.
They want 150 for one.
And
that's the whole up right now.
They've been doing that for years.
Yeah.
They were doing that for years when Black Friday, went to the Olympics and kidnapped
77 years, actually.
Yeah.
77
I think
years
what Nick
to be
is
exact.
getting at is,
I'm trying to think of, we're talking about trying solutions, and I'm thinking, is there somebody that could better represent the Palestinian people?
I think they're afraid of Hamas.
Plight?
I think the regular rank and file Palestinian has to be as afraid of Hamas as anybody else.
Well, then if Hamas is
they're kind of closer to a mafia than they are to a government.
There are people that are trying to represent Palestine as best they can. And those people are being silenced. And the voices for Palestinians right now are being suppressed. And the news media, there's plenty of propaganda. So it is up to us to do our due diligence and try to look at the bigger picture.
What happened to the PTO? Palestinian or PLO?
Yeah, it was
dismantled.
That was Yasser.
What happened? Did Arafat fall out of favor?
What happened is Yasser Arafat died. George Bush called it the biggest flop of his career was not getting Yasser Arafat to sign a treaty, basically giving more land to Israel.
Okay.
And it was the 1967 borders. The 1967 borders is the borders that should still stand today for the Palestinians. That's what the map should look like. Yeah, there's a big gap in the center, but at least we didn't have 29-foot brick walls to divide us. We didn't have the checkpoints that stopped us every 30 minutes to an hour
down. From
down.
the West Bank to the
You have
Gaza?
to have permits. They have to let you out of the cage. You have to ask for
I mean,
permission.
they couldn't make a super highway like a toll road that had
No,
limited access. that
those
went
are
one way?
they have separate roads for the Israelis and separate roads for the
Talk
Palestinians.
about apartheid. You know.
If
77 years, you guys. It's been
What
a long time. A lot of people
This-
think
this
that
is-
this has
listen,
started
the
October
the
7th.
Ottomans, the Ottomans held the Greeks for 400 years, so you got a long way to go.
well,
Right,
you
but
know, one solution would be to give the whole thing back to the Ottomans, and they would maintain order.
Yeah,
But-
I'm not giving it to Erdogan. No,
You know.
no, we're not giving him any
And
more
it was
power.
the Greek invasion of Turkey after the Great War that made the Turks more hard-headed.
I definitely think that.
But what if Israel were a secular state, where everybody in Israel, no matter what their ethnicity, their religion, that they all were equal in elections, equal?
and they will never be.
They will never be. That's
And
the
do
bind
you
they
know,
are
you
in.
do know why, though,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
because
because
that's
you
the way they wanted
outpopulate
it.
'em.
Right.
That's the way
they
they
want to
wanted-
be a Jewish state.
They wanted to be an all-Jewish state.
Right. And then there's Arab people that live there, so they well, one way is just make them go away.
Well,
right?
no,
We
I-
force them out.
I think there's another dynamic that everybody tends to not really look at. The fertility rate amongst Arabs and Palestinians is nearly triple the fertility rate of the Jews. So if they just lived peacefully, coexisted each other, within 3 generations, the Jews would be an extreme minority in their own country. So I think that's part of the problem. You know,
And that's always been the problem.
and they can see down the road that their virtual submission is probable. You know,
That's what happened in Northern Ireland.
yeah.
When I was born, 2/3 of the people in Northern Ireland were Protestants and 1/3 are Catholics. And now, 70-something years later, a majority of the people are Catholics. The Catholics outproduce the Protestants.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
birth control for them Catholics.
It gets to be a little, a little crazy.
Well, but getting back to who can effectively represent the Palestinian people,
Mm-hmm.
you have Hamas. Hamas is pretty much accepted to be a terrorist organization.
They're labeled a terrorist organization.
You don't think they are?
I think they're a resistance.
Okay.
And the reason why I believe that they're a resistance is because the fighting back against the occupation and the stealing of more land, and then you build a 29-foot brick wall and you enclose us, and then you don't let us out, and then you cut off our water, you cut off our electricity, you cut our food supplies. You know, these are all war crimes. You know, they're.
Are you saying that's done arbitrarily, or is that
I
done
think-
usually in a reaction to one action causes a reaction?
I think that one action causes a reaction, and I think that 77 years of oppression, 77 years of torture, 77 years of imprisoning Palestinian children and rapes and murders, I think that has a very big part in this.
I think
That
it's
calls for a reaction.
It does call for a reaction. And when you say you want to defeat Hamas, every time you kill somebody's entire family and you leave one man standing,
you get
that
that
man-
Sicilian revenge thing going.
I mean, who doesn't love a good revenge
Yeah.
story? But think about it in the way like you're watching Star Wars. Whose side did you root for? Did you root for Luke Skywalker? Did you root for Darth Vader?
Yeah, the Empire.
You root for the resistance.
The Empire
So what's the
Strikes
difference if
Back.
it's a fictional story from a real life one?
Well, people that have the ability to fight large-scale wars always call people that only have the ability to fight small-scale wars terrorists.
Terrorists, right?
But this
well,
is not.
one man's freedom
it's
fighter
easy
is
to-
another man's terrorist.
It's easy to call this a war, though, but only one side is seriously armed with bombs in the sky
American
and drones
5,000-pound indiscriminate dumb bombs. That's my biggest problem.
Yeah, our tax dollars,
They're not using those, but go ahead.
Yes, they are.
No, they're not.
not the dumb bombs.
You haven't
They're
been
not.
in Europe,
They're
where
not,
the
no.
where the news is less censored. I was watching an an English language channel that wasn't BBC, and they were showing Palestine, and then they were showing Ukraine, and I thought they had the same girl in both pictures because it was like that Look magazine
Where's Waldo?
girl that was on fire during the Vietnam War. Only this one had a half an arm hanging on the right side. The other one had a half an arm hanging on the left side. The one who had a half an arm on the right side was from Palestine, and she had a brother next to her. So I assume a brother, a younger boy next to her who was blinded. He had blood coming from his eyes from shrapnel. We don't need that. Okay,
Nobody does. Nobody likes this.
I
Nobody
don't care
wants this.
who started this, how it was, or
Well-
what it's all about. The bombs, whether they're 5,000, 2,000, 100, I don't care. They're coming from Alabama. Okay, that's on the internet.
Celebrities are signing them.
You don't have to go much research to find out where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And they're part of the package that we're delivering to the Israelis, okay? And they're an occupying force. Whether it's good or bad, they're an occupying force.
To play
okay?
devil's advocate, that's your obvious. Excuse me. Your opinion that they're an occupying force. They feel that they're defending their country. They feel that this is legitimately their country. They were recognized as a country, and they feel that they've been indiscriminately torn upon and invaded, and whatever you call them, freedom fighters, they'll call them terrorists, whatever the case may be. And now we have no beginning that's looking like we have no end, because each side is going to say, well, you did this, and then the other side's going to say, well, you
One
did that.
side does
well-
something more atrocious than the
Right.
last thing.
Right.
I like that you guys think that the end just stops with Palestine. It doesn't, though.
No.
The end does not stop with Palestine, because if you ever looked at a map of the greater Israel and what they want Egypt. They want the Suez Canal. The greater Israel map goes all the way up to Iran. Like, they want to take Saudi Arabia and Lebanon and look at.
Historically, they were never that big, so
Okay.
they have no
Yeah.
claim
Well,
to it.
I'm telling you, that's the end game. That's what they're really going for.
And
That's what the IDF soldiers' patches on their vest has a map of. The greater Israel.
So
Well,
why do they say? So why do we hear chants of after the Saturday people were coming from the Sunday people?
I'm sorry, one more time.
We hear chants that Arabs, Muslims in particular, will say after we're done with the Saturday people, we're coming for the Sunday people, which means after they conquer the Israelis, they're going to start conquering Christians.
And do you believe that to be true?
Well, given some of the rhetoric that I've seen in the Mr. What's his name, Osama bin Laden, that wanted to kill as many Americans as he possibly could in the name of his religion, yeah, I think that if they wanted to, they would.
Did you know that Osama bin Laden was a CIA plant?
He was at one time, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm saying this because it all starts with the beginning. Okay.
Sure.
Osama bin Laden ended up leading to the Afghanistan war.
Yes. Which was
And-
stupid.
And that ended up killing 1 million Afghanis. They searched for weapons of mass destruction in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Iran and did not find any in either one of those countries.
Right. That was we
The
know that was all a
attack-
pretense.
The
That was.
attack on 9/11 was a strategized plan that had everything to do with Israel. And I will tell you this because there's proof that a woman in New Jersey actually, was standing outside of her window, and she saw that there were 4 Arab men in a white van filming the Twin Towers falling and celebrating. So she ended up calling the cops. Well, the cops apprehended them. It turned out that all 4 guys were Israeli IDF soldiers. And they were questioned by the CIA, and
I
they're
have
like,
to look into that. I've
and
never heard that before.
I have the video for you,
Oh,
and you
yeah,
can
I'd like
watch
to
it
see it.
after this. Absolutely. And it was, they knew.
So you're saying
So-
it's a false
But-
flag?
Listen.
But didn't he also claim? Didn't Al Qaeda and Bin Laden also bomb Spain? There was bombings in Spain. There was bombings in England. There were bombings, I believe, in Paris. I mean, there were bombings all over Europe, not just
You
the
know,
United States.
I'm not sure about that, But I do know that there is one country that has bombed the United States in open waters and tried to pin it on Egypt. It was Israel. Bombed the USS Liberty. And that was in the Mediterranean Sea. They tried to pin it on Egypt, but it turns out that they were mistaken, and it was, in fact, Israel. They said, whoopsies, sorry, we killed a bunch of your guys. And still to this day, that was never investigated. And the soldiers that did survive that attack swear up and down that it was a planned attack, that they were calling over the radio saying, what are you doing attacking a U.S. ship? And they knew that the vessel was clearly marked United States, and they attacked
I'm
them
not
anyway.
trusting I'm not one that doesn't trust our government, so that did happen and it was covered up. It wouldn't surprise me either.
Well, I want to go before we end, and we're getting close to the end. There's two things I wanted to say. The first thing was I'd like to know just what is the feeling of people that are living there right now under the threat of death, okay, from whatever angle you're coming from. Why did they stay? And if you're single or just married, I can understand that. If you have 3 kids, why are you there?
They have no option.
Where are you going to go?
They're
You
into
can
the
go anywhere.
My
Mediterranean
grandparents had
Sea.
option.
Okay, so there's
My grandparents had option. I mean, there's
okay, hold
option.
on. The people of Gaza, you're trapped by the Mediterranean Sea. You're trapped by the 29-foot Israeli wall, and then you're trapped by Rafah crossing. There
You
is
can't
no
find any
getting
money
out.
to get on a plane and get the
There
fuck
is
out.
no getting out. I
There
mean,
is-
there is seeking refuge.
If somebody wrote
But-
you a letter on an internet saying, I don't know you, you're not related to me, but I'm an Arab
There
in
are
trouble.
some people.
If I come to the United States, can you find me a place to stay? What would you do?
There are some people that are privileged enough to make it out.
They're in the middle of a
There's
Goddamn war.
There's 2.2
you know,
million people in Gaza
Borders
before
and
October.
Things are not open. They're in the middle of a war. People are poor. They're lucky they got a roof over their head. How are they going to get to the United States? Jesus
Get in a
Christ.
fishing
Our-
boat and you
our-
go
our
20
people that
20
came
feet.
over were rich and well off compared to these Palestinians.
80% of the population of Gaza lives below the poverty line. 60% of them are children.
All I know is I can't. If people are saying that Jewish people went there and bought property, okay. Well, if they had the
Yes.
money to buy property,
Who'd they
they
buy it
got the
from?
mob from Palestinians that were willing to sell property to GTFO, okay. But those were the smart ones, or the ones that wanted to avoid conflict.
The Israelis were they
It's
were
called-
buying property in the 20s and 30s and the early 40s. In 1948, they were not buying property. They were running the people off. The Stern Gang was slaughtering Arab villages.
I'm not saying after World War II. I'm saying prior to World War II, they were buying property because that's goes back to what Nick was saying earlier. Is some of them wanted to go there. They didn't
So,
want to go to Bavaria.
let's talk about that for a second. Prior to World War II, before 1948, before the Nakba, before all the Jews were brought in, before they took military force to expel the 750,000 Palestinians out of their homes, before they did all that, there was a time when the land was peaceful, where Christian churches, Greek churches, Jewish temples, synagogues, all of that was fine. I mean, there was a low Jewish population. 3% of Palestine at that time had a Jewish population. But at the same time, it's like you can't say that all the Jews that survived from the Holocaust went to Israel. That's not factually true. You know, a lot of Ashkenazi Russian Jews that had no business in the Holocaust ended up coming to Israel after World War II. So it wasn't like these are just the Holocaust survivors. It's like let's
That's
round up who wants to go, because at the time they were pushing Zionism, and
Right.
still to this day they are.
Right.
And I don't know. I just kind of like put my head in my hands, and I just wonder, like, they want an all Jewish state. Okay, that's great, but what about Africa? Do they get an all black country? Like, does it get to be all Africans for Africa? Like, what about Mexico? You know, should we expel all the white people out of Mexico? Like, if Israel can be like, hey, we deserve this land because God said we can have it, who else is going to be the Polynesians? Are the Polynesians going to rise up and say, hey, America, we're taking our islands back. Goodbye. This land was promised to us by our ancient people.
No, absolutely.
Would anybody honor that?
No.
They would say it was bigotry.
So what makes Israelis so different? What
well,
makes
because as bad as it sounds, the right of conquest is
Written
been-
by the
it-
victors.
you know, to the victors go the spoils, and if you win, you keep it. I mean, that's what we've done. We're not going to give the land back to the Indians. They're not going to give the land back to the Polynesians. We're not going to.
And that's what's exactly what
the
we
Russians
wanted.
are taking their property
And
back.
that's
That was their
exactly what we
purpose.
wanted to tell Israel, but we didn't get the chance to tell them that when the United Nations signed Palestine over to them. We didn't
Right.
get to tell them that.
No,
We didn't get to prepare ourselves for war. We didn't get to prepare ourselves to be invaded.
No, you got the short end of the stick, but
You guys got a question in chat. I'm going to try and dissect as best I can here. But question, how do you feel about people defending Palestine with no background? I am a college student and was trying to get the class, and the Palestine protester had gotten in my face saying I can't go to class because I am not a part of the protest and had to get escorted. Why should a person trying to get my degree be harassed by protesters? And is that a good imagine for someone who might be confused by either side? That is the impression that your people make.
he's directing that towards you. But I want to put my 2 cents in.
Wait. We know what your 2 cents is. Go ahead.
First of all,
This one's for
can
you.
you identify yourself? Just first name. That's all we need, so we know who we're talking to.
No, it's okay. I'll address the question. If you are looking to get to your class and you're having a difficult time, you're welcome to message your professor and tell them that you were delayed by a protest. It's as simple as that. They do offer e-learning online, and you're welcome to
Whoa,
do
wait a
that
minute.
as
Whoa,
well.
whoa.
But
Well,
with certain colleges and protesting, it is considered private property. You cannot protest on college campuses. They will arrest you. That is part of their policy.
but they're
So-
not.
So if I'm sure they were removed, no protesters just get to
Well,
live on the campus grounds like that. You are allowed to protest on sidewalks. I mean, that is
I'm sorry, Nick, but as a boomer from the '60s, you can never match the sex you get after a good protest.
Great,
never.
Danny.
There's
I
no
appreciate
dance,
that,
no
Danny.
concert, no
but
Bruce
I
Springsteen.
don't want to dismiss the question because we saw this time and time again that, listen, you want to protest, that's fine. But other people have a right to live their lives. They're protesting so the Palestinian can live their lives the way they want, and yet because of your protest, I can't live my life the way I want to. I have to go to e-learning, which I don't want to do, or I have to go get an escort, which I
Well,
really
you know,
shouldn't
but
have
that's
to do.
good.
You can walk around.
You
the
can't
protest.
walk around it.
You
no,
can
did
walk
you?
around
No,
a protest.
no.
You
Did you see what happened when they tried to do that? They wouldn't let them
who
in.
are they?
okay. Hold on.
Where?
Are they?
It was,
are they
it was documented
aggravating?
at UCLA. The one kid they were trying to get to their classes. They would just would not let them through, and the police wouldn't do anything about it. Okay.
You couldn't walk 2 blocks this way and just walk around.
Why
them.
should
What, they
I
send out
have to?
planters?
That's the.
Why should I have to? You
right
want to
there.
protest? That's fine. Okay. But why does your protest have to include
Because it's the
me?
point of protest.
No, it's not, Danny.
Yes, it is.
No, it's
to
not.
draw attention to
No,
something
if
that
you want to prevent the
ignore
government from
daily.
if you want to prevent the government from shipping bombs, then you can sit outside their factory and protest. But an
Well,
average
nobody's
kid,
going to see you.
well, that's too bad. That's your problem.
They're
But
right-
if an average
they're
kid just
right
wants to get in
for
his bike and
people
go to
get
class,
together and protest.
they just had
First
a.
Amendment.
You know, some guy has to walk around a protest, and you think he's getting a raw deal? Come on.
No, I'm saying it doesn't need to
Do
happen.
you remember the civil rights program where they sat down on a bridge? You couldn't cross the damn bridge, and there was like 7 miles you had to go to get across that river if you didn't cross that bridge.
And what happened?
They gained the attention of the southern state of Alabama. Okay, things had to happen that changed.
First of
That
all,
was during
otherwise, it was going to
segregation.
happen.
a whole different time, a whole different generation, a whole
come
different,
on.
a whole different media
You're going to
concept.
Roman Empire stuff.
No, Danny, because come on, now somebody has you got 50 people protesting and it's on national news and nobody gives a shit about 50 people.
That wasn't
pardon my
50
language.
people at the college.
I'm not saying that. Yeah, well, at Columbia at Columbia University when they took over the library, there was 70 of them.
Yeah, that's a
And-
private campus as well.
Right, and they wouldn't let them go until they showed an ID, and 60 or 70% of the protesters didn't even go to school there. Okay.
Okay.
So what about the kids that do go to school there, that pay the money, that want to just go to the library and learn? Why do they have to be subjected to that?
Did they get into the library?
They got into the library, but they couldn't study because they had 100 protesters that were jumping up and down on tables.
There's, that's a public street that runs through Columbia University. Did you know that?
Did the public street go through the library?
It goes by it.
Well, they were in the library.
Well, they
In
had
the
no-
library.
Okay,
I
so
did
so
see
what do you
that.
want to do? So okay,
No,
so some
no, my
people got
point is-
inconvenienced.
No, but the question
You know?
was,
Yeah.
is that's why some people don't like the way this is being processed because
they're
listen,
inconvenienced.
yeah,
Well,
exactly.
that's the point. You got
Do
to
you know
make
what's
people
inconvenient? An occupation.
You're gonna throw
Great.
77
monkey
years.
wrench in their
So-
life
so-
so,
so-
that
but
they
again,
don't
you
sit
want-
on their dumb asses.
You want to inconvenience people so you can make your point.
No, you want to be Kyle, whatever his name is, and carry an M16 and a march down the street to make your point, right?
What are you talking about?
Kyle, what's his name? The guy that Rittenhouse, okay, the guy who
He
writes
wasn't
it.
protesting.
Well,
with
he
a-
was
oh
protesting.
No, he wasn't, Danny.
Oh,
He
blown. He was marching in a
Danny,
BLM
whole
march.
different-
No,
No,
he was
Danny,
not
he was not
protesting.
protesting. He was protecting somebody's friend's property.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
He
yeah,
was-
marching
wait,
down the
well-
street in Wisconsin.
Sorry, Dan, you're wrong.
No, he was
Well,
protecting an auto dealership.
auto do, yeah. Read the transcripts.
Yeah, okay.
Read the transcripts from the trial.
Come on. He
Where,
went,
where Milwaukee was found not guilty.
well,
Go ahead.
I'll tell you something. You were a partner in a security company.
Yeah.
What laws did he conform to if he was a security guard? He didn't have any file on him. He didn't have a perk card. He didn't have any kind of
Yeah, and the
registration
people-
for the gun. He didn't have the tan card. He didn't have any of that stuff.
And the people that were burning down the buildings didn't have their pyrotech
So
licenses
that made it
either.
okay, right?
Yeah, this is just, you've gotten off the rails on this one.
It's the protesting topic. He feels
Right.
very passionate about it.
I'm
Uh,
a protester.
And I agree.
I don't say that they don't.
Yeah, but you don't like it when they do.
What?
But you don't like it when they do.
I don't mind. Well, you're right.
It's just-
I don't like people blocking highways when ambulances and people need to do what they're supposed to do on a daily basis because you don't like that we're
Don't go
that we're
for it.
vegan.
You know,
that we're
neither-
not vegan. Okay,
Nobody
I'm sorry.
does. That's the whole reason for doing it.
But that doesn't make it
Nobody likes
right.
it.
Just because you're protesting doesn't mean you can stop the world to prove your point.
Yeah,
You know-
but at the same time, when Israel gets so much support from the United States, it's the reason why they do it. They're outraged. I mean, it's speaking up for an injustice. They're not just protesting to waste time. They're protesting to raise awareness because a lot of people think that this began on October 7th, that Hamas attacked them out of nowhere, that they were unwarned. Listen, this has been going on for 77 years.
Well, that's been going on longer than that. But yeah.
Longer than that, you know, it's time that it stop. They need to stop the killing. They need to release all the prisoners, release all the hostages, cease fire for good, forever. Because
would that
like,
happen?
From
Do you
your
think
lips to
if they
God's
released
ears.
all the, how would you release them so that you got
I
to-
see
A for B?
I see Israel as being an investment. With the amount of our politicians that accepted money from AIPAC,
Yeah, I got
For-
that, but how would you practically exchange those people?
you don't when there's money involved.
You what?
You don't when there is money involved.
Okay.
There's
I
no
mean,
solution.
there's no solution because when they say, "Oh, we want the hostages back," what it really means is, "Hey, we're going to take all of northern Gaza. We're going to push 2.2 million people to
you know-
southern Gaza. We're starting a new invasion. We're starting to clear that land." Listen, if it was an attack on Hamas, if it was like a strategic military attack on Hamas, these underground tunnels, you mean to tell me that you can find Osama bin Laden living in a cave halfway across the freaking world? but you can't find where Hamas is.
No, they can find it. It's
Oh,
just that they can't.
they
They
know.
can't do anything with
They
Hamas
know-
without collateral damage,
I
making
don't
it
think-
impossible. And
they
Hamas
know-
is smart enough to know that.
Right.
Okay? And this is
Yeah.
why I'm going to give you my segment that I'm introducing into this. If I were, I would. Okay? If I were,
If you were the
Netanyahu,
wizard, if you were the
Net-
wizard,
Netan-
wizard with a baton,
Benjamin
with a magic stick,
Netanyahu.
Benjamin that doesn't know nothing. What I would do when they took the hostages is I would have done what a Sicilian would have done. I would have sent in the commandos, the Israeli commandos, and I would have gotten 10-1. And it wouldn't have been soldiers. It would have been grandmas, grandpas, little kids, all these other things. And I would have brought them back and exchanged them for the hostages that way. But you're right about the political prisoners. This goes back to that. Why is Israel continuing to have these people? They have to feed them. It costs $67,000 a year for an American prisoner to be held in a prison. I wonder what it costs in Israel. Maybe not as much, but still, it's got to cost them money. And they got a lot of them. So why? Why are they keeping them? Just give them back. Just do some negotiations
Well,
on that end.
Again,
So the-
I don't know the answer. I'm sure that the flip,
Well, that's
the,
if I
I'm
was
sure, I'm
Big
sure
Ben.
That, I'm sure the flip side is these aren't political prisoners. These are terrorists that have committed acts or atrocities. I'm sure that's their justification.
Sure.
I'm not going to speak for them. I'm not saying that they're right in that. Okay, but this is what we get back and forth all the time.
Well, it's not
with
gonna
this
stop.
with this part of the world.
Is there
And-
enough money been spent over the past 77 years?
Just to
being-
give each one
being-
$1 million
to
and say,
just
go
give-
find
yeah.
another desert.
Give every Palestinian family $1 million.
The
they don't
Israelis are
want-
the
but they-
Israelis are trying to turn Palestine into the new Dubai. They're trying to turn the Gaza Strip into like the new
Riviera.
Riviera.
Would that
They're
not be
like-
good for the Palestinian people?
it wouldn't, because it's the Holy Land. It's a dry country.
There it
The
is.
Jews don't drink. The Muslims don't drink.
There it is.
You know,
God's
it's
practical joke.
It's the Holy Land for a reason. Why should we bring any disgrace to that land by allowing? So there is tourism. Tourism
Doomed.
has always been allowed in Palestine. We've always welcomed people, especially the people that we welcomed the most were the survivors from the Holocaust when they came in on that boat, and we said, "Welcome to Palestine," and they were there for a whole 3 months before the military groups came in, before they started 750,000 people being pushed out.
It's like all those sci-fi movies we used to see where the first aliens that come over are real friendly. The next ones want to eat you.
Yeah. So they say
First-
that.
the first English in Massachusetts.
So they say that this war is
Or the
with
next
Hamas.
Pilgrims.
If the war was really with Hamas, then why are they killing so many civilians in the West Bank? Why are the settlers attacking Palestinians, constantly killing them? You know, and the settlers get no repercussion for. They think that they're doing good by their people by hurting Palestinians by killing them.
Well, as a father, I wouldn't last there for more than a week. I'd do whatever I could. If I was too broke, I'd write letters to whatever relatives I can, start a GoFundMe page, and I'd GTFO. Grab the kids and get out of there. Find another desert. I mean, there's plenty of them to pick from. You
And
can
I-
even go to the Gobi Desert. It would be better. And anyway, I can't. You know, people who tell me that religiously we stay there, or because it's tradition, or my generations of family, I say that's all BS. You know why? Because I live in Illinois and I read the stuff about Illinois daily, about Pritzker this and Pritzker that, and taxes this and taxes that. All you have to do to get generations of people that have lived in Illinois for generations to move is to raise the property tax by 2%, and they're off to Florida. Okay? Or if you raise the income tax 0.5%, they're off to Texas.
Some of
okay?
us are stuck. So
Yeah, well,
They,
some
they,
are
they
stuck.
go to
Some of us are
Illinois,
stuck.
but keep working it. They go to
Exactly what the
Indiana, but they keep
Palestinians
working
would
in
say.
Illinois.
So that if they
We're
get
stuck.
hurt, they'll get workman's comp, and if they get, they'll get
I'm
more
only stuck because of
Those
my
people
career
really
and my family.
piss me off.
I'm
Yeah.
not stuck because of a wall.
Right.
I get it. Well, this has been insightful.
Illinois for
I
the
mean, I've been,
Illinoisans.
There is one thing that I wanted to talk about
Sure.
too and bring up is the United Nations Resolution 194, and that is the right of return. And they set up this resolution so that refugees who seek asylum from being slaughtered by Israelis as refugees have the right to return back to Palestine and be compensated and or get their land back. It is it is in the UN resolution. It is 194, and
It sounds like a reasonable resolution, except the UN is a paper tiger that nobody really listens to anymore, that has
Well,
no bite.
I can't see the
and
United
has
States
really
getting
no
behind it.
credibility after a
Right.
while either. I mean, the United Nations is just
Well,
no
if the
credibility.
U.S. got behind it, they'd have a hard time at home with what's that phrase for the slaves that were enslaved?
reparations.
Reparations for them, because it leads right into the same idea, right? Isn't it? Reparations for
That's
the
what I said. I mean,
stuff we took away from you.
It sounds nice. It sounds like a reasonable thing that if people get displaced, they get to go back home and get a boost. Get a low interest loan. I guess if this was America, you'd get a nice government low interest loan to
Yeah.
build your house or something. Okay, fine.
Yeah, that China would
Okay,
finance.
but the UN,
But-
the UN just is not credible at this point, and nobody listens to them. They're paper tigers.
yeah, at this point, it would be easier for you to say that you have Jewish blood and that it's easier for you to get land in Palestine right now than it is for me. So it's just
Well, I was told by Al Katz, my Jewish friend, that I could never claim, even though my DNA says I got 1% European blood, European Jew, and 13% Levant Semitic, which is indistinguishable between Arab and Jew, right? So I said, hey,
you
hey,
come
we're
right from
cousins.
Abraham, huh?
Yeah.
You come right from Abraham.
And I said, Dale, we're related. He
Right.
goes, no, we're not. And I said, what do you mean?
Abraham was the fork in the road. Everybody was
Did you
good until
know-
Abraham, and they went to the fork in the road.
I
Did you
said,
know that?
Don't you have the one drop, one blood, one drop rule? He goes, no, you got to be born from a Jewish mother. That's the only way you can be a Jew. That's what he told me.
That's unreal.
My mom has to be a Jew,
Yes.
and her mom has to be a Jew.
We're not going to get into the what is a woman discussion, are we?
Raizuli is a Berber.
Well, folks,
Well, that goes double for Berbers.
Listen, thank you for coming. This
Yeah.
was
thank
it was
you very
really
much.
insightful. It was a
You've
great
enlightened
perspective.
us all, okay?
You know, I like that we would be able to just talk to you from your perspective. Maybe one day we'll have somebody from the other side give their perspective on the whole
Yeah.
situation, and
I'd be
Maybe
down.
we'll have
kinda
them both
put
together.
our
on a
put our
third day.
notes together, and well, yeah, we hope to. I mean,
I
that's
will
always
show you
good.
that video.
That's
We will
our
when we're
mission
done.
statement, folks.
Oh
when
yeah,
we're
that's right.
done.
We're still filming. My
Yeah.
side.
So,
But you know,
So there
our
we
mission
go.
statement is to have dialogue, we have respectful dialogue, and still leave here at the end of the day having respect for each other.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so that's
Definitely.
what this is all about. Next time,
next time it's Nick, and what are you going to be talking about next time, Nick?
we're going to talk about the fool on the hill.
Oh, hold on a second.
We're gonna talk about this fraud.
The
that's been-
flu epidemic?
No, the fool on the hill.
Oh, the fool on the hill.
Joe
Fool on the
Biden.
Hill is going to be the title, and given all these revelations about our former president, who it has nothing to do about him being sick with cancer, but it's we've been sold a bill of goods.
So we've been drinking Phil's coffee. Okay, we showed that 2 weeks ago,
Okay.
and my take on Phil's coffee is it tastes a little bit different. It has a chocolatey taste to it. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know
Good
what
for
that
you,
is.
Phil.
You guys, Phil. Anyway, next week, if you guys want to join us and comment on whatever this is, it's Big Shoulders coffee. Okay, I had to search hard, far and wide to find it. Big Shoulders coffee, bold slugger. Okay,
You
Is it
big
from-
shoulders,
is it
young
from
one,
Chicago?
he who follows.
He
Is that
who
the city?
follows.
City of
You
Big
speak pretty
Shoulders?
good American for a Comanche. Someone teach you?
Don't ask me. I don't drink
How
coffee.
many people caught that?
I'm a Dunkin' guy.
So,
All right,
so
folks.
for the gang, me and Nick have a final word for you.
Good night,
Good night,
Mrs.
Mrs. Calabash, wherever you are.